Hello folks, Fishbat here, and I'm here to talk about hobby time. That is the hobby stuff I've been doing since my last update in January. This slide says July 2016. That's because I actually made this last month, and I've just had problems with PowerPoint uploading the video, and I'm trying an alternate program to see if the sound comes out properly. So tell me in the comments if this is any better. Anyway, let's see what I've done. Oh, also, this video exists completely because of Retropia TV, who asked for an update. So this is for you, Retro. Let it not be said that I don't respond to comments. If you'd like to see some content on the channel, just ask. So, Varon. On the left, you can see the Varon chieftain I've been painting. Nice avatars of war figure. That was the state he was in the last hobby video. A couple of weeks later, I finished him off. It was days, not weeks, but I finished him off shortly after that, and he now looks as he does on the right, which is quite a lot better, I hope you'll agree. We also had those Chaos Warriors that I was stripping, and they were in the state that you saw on the left there. They were pretty awful, put together with PVA glue and all sorts of horrible stuff. Now you can see on the right, they are just in a far, far better condition. I tried out some different painting techniques. I was trying to be a little bit clever in how I was doing the lighting, so that the highest bits on the model would be sort of a more bluey, and below that it would fade to black. It didn't come out entirely as I'd hoped, but it was an interesting thing to try. A few of the helmets have model lines still on there, which is something I'm very annoyed about, but I'm not going to go back and fix them now. Very happy with how it's come out. These guys, these are my troll horde for the Varon. They are made, two of the models are Chaos Spawn, and two of them are some Reaper Bones. My favourite of this lot has to be the Beholder that I've taken there, because the way his teeth have come out and the way his big bulging eye has come out just really makes me happy. The little bloodshot veins in his eye, just quite grabbing. He looks pretty intense. He's a creature that looks like he just wants to bite. I've got some figures, though. These are from Age of Sigma. I forget they're called. They're Khorne, Blood, Skull, somethings. Like everything from Khorne is. Blood Reavers, I think? Anyway, I use these as Reavers and Kings of War, and they're pretty nice models. Got to credit Games Workshop there. The red helmets look pretty nice, I think. The scarring I am pretty happy with as well. And I've multi-based them in a way that I can have them as 2 troops or a regiment, and the rock goes across both bases when they're lined up as a regiment, which makes it's pretty good to look at as well, pretty cohesive. Pretty happy with how these guys turned out as well. I like the scarring, I like the red helmets, I like the multi-basing. And they look very dynamic as well. They're running forward and flailing and all that sort of stuff. Very good. On the left I've got a standard bearer. He's another one of the Khorne Blood Reaver guys, who I just cut the axe off and put on a banner. And he does fine as a skull, as a standard bearer. On the right I've got a Chaos Warriors mage, a sorcerer, and I picked him up for $3 when a store was closing down locally. I didn't have use for him at the time. I just thought, no, he's a nice model, I'll paint him. And now I have a use for him in Kings of War. So I'm not painting every model in my Varon army to a particular scheme, just whatever I think looks good. And I thought for this guy, the blue and gold robes with the white robes in front, that's sort of what I want, and it's, to me, I think it looks quite nice. This was my project to make a Magus Conclave, which is meant to be a group of sorcerers, magi, working on this one. I suppose they're working together to cast spells like an artillery piece in the game. So I've taken a couple of Bones figures, put one of them up on some cork to like a big high rock to look dramatic, and to make it look like he's really dynamic and doing something, I've got him casting a spell. So he's already got the hair being blown back as if by magical force. So I've just taken a bit of plastic we can see on the end, and that is the end of an arm from a Chaos Spawn bit. Drilled it, put some wire in, wrapped the wire around the arm, and bulked that wire up with some green stuff. So as you can see on the right, it looks like a bit of magical energy coursing through this guy. Really happy with how this has turned out. It's quite striking on the table. Chaos Wolves, Dire Wolves, these guys. Not entirely happy with these guys. I've tried painting them a few ways, and I was never happy with how they came out. The first try, these guys came out looking like Skittles. I gave them different bright coloured horns and spikes for every different dog. Just didn't look good. And another problem was that the dogs, because they were sort of brownish, they blended a lot into the brown basing, which is something I really didn't like. And I didn't know of a way to stop it from looking identical to the basing, and still have it look like a wolf. So I've gone with a sort of darker grey brown for most of the fur, and then a paler brown for the shaggy fur at the front, and then the red horns and the blue horns, which I use to differentiate the units. Not ideal, but I think it's passable. This guy, I bought this Great Unclean one years ago when I played 40k. Haven't played 40k for years, so I stripped him off the base. And when I painted him, I hadn't painted many models before, so he was in a pretty woeful state. So I stripped him down, glued him back together, pinned him together, and gave him another go. He only took a couple of hours to paint, I think, 2 or 3 hours. And I'm really happy with how he's come out. He looks truly gross. I don't know if it shows too well in this photo, but all the buos sort of look a bit glistening. All the exposed flesh has Nurgle's rot on it. It looks pretty gross. I'm very happy with him. Good old Slimy. And he's good in game as well. I just like this miniature. He makes me happy. Now, these guys. On the right, this was a Reaper miniature that a friend gave me. I think he intended to use it for some Dark Elf force or something, but I thought that she'd do pretty well as a Herger of the Fallen. What with the wings. So I've taken her, and she's not done yet, as you can tell. You know, the swords look pretty plain, there's a few bits and pieces that need to be touched up, but I spent a lot of time on her face, and I think this is the first time I can honestly say that I've painted a good feminine face on a miniature. The features look soft, the lips look full, the eyes look appropriate, like she's clearly looking at something, but she's not, derping. She doesn't have cat's eyes. The scar looks good. I'm very happy with how she's coming along. On the left, I got the old metal Archaon model very cheap. The trade-off being that the model didn't come with the correct Archaon head, and it was missing the shield. However, the head that it came with looks fine. I was painting it for a few hours before I even noticed it was the wrong head. Because the correct Archaon head, of course, has that third eye in the forehead there. But this model is just a classic. It is like an ancient Greek sculpture. It is magnificently proportioned, just has this great sense of bearing and dignity. An absolute pleasure to put together and to paint. I enjoyed every minute of painting this guy. So I feel like the horse's muscles are very well defined without looking like they're blocky sort of muscles like you get sometimes. Archaon himself, who I use as my chieftain on Direfang, I've done a similar thing with the armor as I've done with the Chaos Warriors, in that it's sort of the bluish at the higher points where it's exposed to the light. On the sword there, I've done some fire effects, and I've actually learned something, that the hottest part of the fire is white, and the darkest parts are dark red and then get blackish, which is the correct way to paint fire. Usually I paint it like I'd paint anything else, and put the highest parts white. No. The inside part of the fire is white, and it gets darker as it radiates out, because the inside of the fire is the source of light. And now that I've corrected it, the sword looks good. It looks really hot. What else can I say? I'm very happy with how the gold came out on the helmet. I started mixing a Vallejo metal colour paint with just a plain old gold I had lying around, and it comes out with a very pale, thin gold, and a very thin application of this gold really just shines. Not many gold paints shine, but this mixture, it came out very well, and when you hold it up to light, it shines quite realistically. Which of course for the helmet, the focal point of such a great model, is something I'm very pleased with. So, very happy with these guys, very happy. And of course, the thing I'm probably most happy with, my King on Chimera, King on the Manticore. Just look at the face on this guy. I have not done stubble before, until I had done this guy. It was surprisingly easy. You just get some dark grey paint and you put a lot of medium on it so that it's thin and shows the colour beneath it. So as long as you have the flesh colour beneath it, it's going to show up like stubble. And I learned some scarring as well. I'll put the link to the tutorial that I followed to do the scarring, but it was pretty simple, only 4 or 5 steps with fairly common paints, and it will give you a very good scarring look. Well, I'm flattering myself, but I think the scarring look is pretty good. You don't see it as much in this shot, but when you look from above, the wings of the Manticore look really nice. They're very vascular, and they've sort of fade from the highest points where it's a sort of really pale purple down to a dark purple, got a good contrast going on. Yeah, I'm just incredibly happy with how this has all come out. Yep, that's all I've got to say. It's a great model, and I'm very pleased with how I've painted it. These guys, I painted these just before I made this video, and they are the Chaos Warriors who I'm using as Sons of Korgan. What do you call it? Mounted Sons of Korgan, that's what they're called in Kings of War. Once again, I tried to do the technique where the highest points are blue and they fade to black in the other way. You can probably see this most in the warrior in the front right of the picture, where his helmet and torso behind the flag, being hidden from light by the flag, are less highlighted than, say, the head of that horse that he's riding, and the shield. So that the shield and the horse's head are a paler blue, whereas his blue is darker. I hope that looks right. I'm iffy on it. Still learning this technique. Not sure how I'm doing, but, you know, experimentation is what leads to progress. If you were to turn these guys around, if you were to look from the opposite angle, the bottom left rather than the upper right as we are here, you would see that they would look much darker, since I've got the light sort of coming from above. This guy, a Hydra, not painted yet obviously, just undercoated black, also speckled white. I tried to do the highlighting technique where you spray white over the top to give all the top surfaces a sort of white, but I use a really cheap spray paint from Bunnings Warehouse, which sort of spatters out the paint like, you know, really thick. Just sort of, well, not so much thick, but not an even spray. Like, it sprays unevenly, and so you get this really speckled effect. Not the best, but it's what it is. This is here not so much because it's an accomplishment in painting, but because it is in pinning. Because this is an old metal model, they don't make this anymore, and every one of those necks needs to be pinned to the body, and the tail needs to be pinned to the body, and the entire miniature needs to be pinned to the base. So I think I had to drill how many holes? Got 5 heads and a tail, so that's 6, and the foot to the base, 7, so 14 holes I had to drill, 13 of those into metal with a tiny little drill bit. It took forever to drill into all of these. But you need to do it, or else this metal is going to fall apart every single time you look at it sideways. So I've put that time in, I've invested it, I've pinned this model to Kingdom Come. It's going to have to take a beating to fall apart now. I say, incurring the wrath of the dice gods to knock it over. But yeah, it's going to stay together now. That makes me happy. I've been working on my ogres a bit as well. So in this picture you can see that I have taken my ogre warlock and I've repainted the fire. I mentioned this before, but I've realised that the inside of the fire should be white and the outside of the fire should be getting progressively darker, yellow to orange to red to darker reds. Which is the opposite of how I've been painting it previously, but now I've righted my wrongs and the fire just looks plain better. The fire looks actually hot, which is good. The picture on the right, unfortunately, is a bit out of focus. But the other thing that's changed in the photo is that I've rebased the warlock. I've, in the left photo, used just a white flock, which I've glued down, on the right I have mixed baking soda powder. Baking soda, yes. I've mixed baking soda with PVA and water and used that as the mix for the base. The reason for this was that I used this method for my Varon and found that I liked it. And I got some new Ogres for free, which was nice, and decided I need to be consistent with my basing. I'll use the new snow technique. But if I'm going to use that for the new Ogres, I should really go back and strip the old Ogres. So I got my Ogre army and meticulously went through and took off all of the old snow on the bases, which was a lot of scraping. But I did it. Went through the whole army, scraped all the old PVA off, being very careful not to destroy the models or the paint jobs. Reapplied with this new technique, and realised very shortly after that if you don't mix in white paint, that mixture will yellow over time. And so I had some yellowing bases. So I had to strip the entire Ogre basing a second time, and then reapply it again. So this was a very time-consuming effort, and there's a couple of models I still haven't rebased yet. I think the Ogre Blaster and a few other things. But I don't have pictures of it here, but the Ogres have just been a really time-consuming project to really get no more models done. But at the end of the day, they'll be done to a higher standard they were before, and hopefully they will look better. Abyssal Dwarfs. So these were the focus of my last video, and I've made some progress. Gargoyles. After using these models, I'm really not much of a fan of them. The detail's pretty soft. They're awkward in how they fit together in some ways. What can I say about them? They have mold lines in awkward places. It's made of this, the res-stick stuff that Mantic likes. And mold lines are just really, really difficult to get off them. And I've got them in weird places like across their heads, or across hair, and over arms and musculature and things like that. It can be really, really annoying to deal with. It has going across their chests. And following across that with a hobby knife, just a pain. Very difficult to work with in some ways. And not nice to paint either. The detail is just too smooth. But what I've done is I've decided just to make it as striking as I can, so a usual dark grey paint, pale grey dry brush, and then I've gone with red wings to be striking, similar to Mantic's scheme, and used a really bright red, the brightest I had, to make it look like there was some striation in the wing. And then I've just used some insulation foam to spice up the bases a little bit. You can see in the background there I've got that angry looking head, looking like a ruin there. So that's what I did to try and spice up these gargoyles. I think from a distance they're striking, and that's the most I can hope for. Also got the Mantic Abyssal Half-Breeds. These are made from the same rustic stuff. They're nowhere near as annoying as the gargoyles, but when you look close they do have some soft detail as well. But I think each miniature looks pretty good. They have a very nice silhouette, if you follow my meaning. The Bull Centaur conceptually has always been a great idea, I think. And I just like having a big unit of them, especially with such big hammers. And these have enough detail that they are fun to paint, unlike the gargoyles, which were a pain. At least the gargoyles were quick, though. So yeah, painted these guys up. A pretty simple red scheme. And I've got, again here, the multi-basing. I've got the rock on the back next to the rock at the front, so I can have two troops or a regiment. And it's good to have some speed in my Abyssal Dwarfs at last. And this is a big work in progress still. You might recognise the altar and the priest from my previous video. On the base here I've built sort of a ziggurat, which is going to be how I'm going to multi-base my horde of Black Souls. So I've got my Russian alternative dwarfs there with my Black Souls. They're definitely work in progress, as you can see, and that's sort of how they're going to be arranged on the ziggurat. So I just think this is going to be a really cool way to multi-base these figures. So this will only have 20 figures on it, but once they're over the ziggurat, I think it'll be visually striking enough that, you know, having half the amount is not going to be a bother to my opponent. And of course, the ziggurat comes apart, so I can run them as troops as well as if I want to, which is really nice. Kingdoms of Men. I do have some figures for this, some of the lovely Perry War of the Roses figures. They are in no ready state to be played. There's like 200 of them I need to paint, so it's going to be a long, long time before they hit the table. But still, I've done some cool things with them, and you might want to see. So the first one is the General, the work in progress, and I've just done him up in gold armor, which obviously is not finished, as you can tell, but I just think that gold armor looks pretty nice. The second thing was the standard bearer. This flag is completely freehand. Carefully measured out, carefully painted it. Yeah, I'm very happy with how it came out. The freehand on the eagles looks very close, and even on the opposite side of the flag. This is both sides of the flags I've done, even though you can only see one in the photo. But it's come out so well, it's so even, very happy with it. I've also been working on a few terrain projects. My club has an open day going on later this month in August, and I'm going to be presenting Kings of War as a bit of a demo game, and I thought for this project I would make my own table and terrain to go with a special scenario. Let's have a look. So this is the state of what I had going about a month ago when I took this photo. Since then I have worked on it substantially. It's a 4x4 board, and the focus of the game is going to be on what you see in the middle there. It's a series of stones which are going to be sacred stones for Ogres, which is their ancestral place for communion. They commune with their ancestor spirits, and it's going to be the Ogres are going to try and get there, and there's going to be a Varon tribe in the way who the Ogres are trying to smash. And I've also got some trees which I've bought from a model railway place, nice snowy trees, which will decorate the board as well. Let's have a close look at some of these pieces. So this is pretty much like the skull equivalent of Mount Rushmore. This, I just got a whole block of insulation foam, which is marvellous stuff. I've always heard about it, never had access to it because I couldn't find it in any local hardware shops, but I went to my local Bunnings and I actually looked around and found some there. It was about $12 for a 4-foot by 2-foot piece, which was 3 centimeters thick, and it was absolute gold, best value in terrain making you'll ever see. Except for free stuff you'll find in builders' dumpsters. And it is fantastic to work with. So this skull I glued about 4 squares together, and then I just hacked and chipped away at it. It's meant to look rough deliberately, and out of proportion deliberately, because it's meant to be something like an ogre would craft. And being out of proportion and wonky is kind of good for me since I'm not that good at carving, but I think it's going to look like a nice little bit of terrain as well, a nice bit of visual interest. A hill, all those monoliths I carved as well, just got a Stanley knife and cut into the insulation foam. I've painted those up, they are removable, they're attached by toothpicks. Got a little bloody altar there. I'm not zoomed in enough to see, but there's a bloody handprint. The Games Workshop blood effects on a hill. And all of this terrain, all the table will have nice snow effects all over it as well. So it's going to be sort of a dark brown earth, like a dark umber, and snow effects here and there through it, as if it's like a halfway melting. Yeah, so this will be the focal point of the game. And here's a close-up of those monoliths, so you can see that they look like they're 1 billion years old. Doesn't show it that well in the photo, but in the hole near the top of each monolith, there's sort of a glowing blue light to sort of give that magical energy, and some runes down the bottom, just to give them that ancient community vibe. This is a mineshaft I built, very similar to how I built the skull, by gluing 4 layers thick of the foam and then just carving away, and a bit of balsa wood for the supporting beams of the entrance. I built this because I wanted to use it for the first scenario in the Hellfire and Stone campaign, which still haven't played, but I have full intentions of playing at some point in the near future and making videos for. So, look out for that, hopefully sometime before 2027. I've also done some Blood Bowl stuff. This was earlier in the year, but I did it. As you can see, I've been quite busy here. Everything on this table I've done myself. I don't have close-ups of the undead in these pictures, but they're a mixture of Reaper Bones and Mantic Undead, and I've taken those miniatures and I have green stuffed on helmets and armor pads and things of that nature to use to give them more sort of gridiron look, if you will. The dice were blank dice, which I painted the symbols on myself and varnished to protect them. The board, I just took a bit of MDF I got really cheap from a resource rescue near here, and I got a really cheap bit of grass mat from an online store selling like model train supplies, so it would have been $5 or so including postage. I just measured out the grid and carefully painted on the dots and the lines. The scoreboard up there, you can see that's just made from popsicle sticks, and the ramshackle look I think looks well, especially if you play orcs. So all of this I've made from old miniatures, and it has cost me very, very little to do. All of this stuff I sort of had lying around, and it was just the time to put it together. And here's another angle. You can see the dice there. I'm just very happy how this has all come together. Not entirely certain that I like the purple on the undead, but, you know, whatever. It'll do, it's fine. The team here, I've got some Mantic dwarfs, and I sculpted some beard, lips and tusks onto those dwarfs, as well as some big hats on them. I've taken the Mantic Abyssal Half-Breed, cut off the weapon, just made him a Bull Centaur, and some Reaper Goblins have become the Hobgoblins for these guys. And yeah, I think they look pretty decent for a team. And that's everything I've got to show. Hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll see you next time.